You know, I've been thinking about this because there are a number of people that are Democrats or progressives or liberals, whatever term you want to call them, that who think I'm a traitor to them. And I'm trying to figure out how I can explain this to them, that we're all working together to really bring about positive change, not to go back to the reactionary stuff of the Bush administration and the Pawlenty people and so on. And I thought of this idea of the native people recognized that the wolf was not the enemy of the deer, but was actually what made the deer strong. And I've read many things about that. That the importance of having some opposition, and what the wolf did is remove the weak and the sick and so on, so that the herds would be strong and prosper. And I think that Minneapolis, what's happened is the wolves have all gone away, and the party has become sick. There's no opposition for the Democratic Party, and I think that a lot of problems have been caused by that. And I do want to talk briefly before, at the very beginning, about the fact that I'm running as a total independent, small I. It's part of a coalition, and this is revolutionary. This has never happened, at least to my knowledge, and a number of other people who talked about this have looked into it. Never has the city of Minneapolis had such a broad coalition formed to bring change to the city. And so the Democrats are saying that I'm a Republican, and I think they're saying that because the Republicans have often been held in low esteem in the city of Minneapolis for many years. They've not been elected, and I think that there are very good reasons for that. If you look at the national Republicans, look at the state Republicans, and I think that there are reasons that people would not have a great deal of respect for them in the city of Minneapolis with what our attitudes are. And yet what I'm being painted at is that I'm now a Republican because I've had this endorsement from the Minneapolis Republican Party. So people ask about that. Well, hasn't Papa John sold out and become a Republican? The answer is no. Papa John has not changed. What has changed is the city has become in such bad shape. Things have gotten so bad that a whole number of people have said we have to work together with people that we don't agree with completely to bring about change, because it's become a one-party city. Now, I have to tell you, I was a Democrat, and not just voting as a Democrat and not just supporting candidates as a Democrat. I was a director in my Senate district. I was on the State Central Committee. I did a whole number of things. I worked on both presidential campaigns and state campaigns for candidates. As a strategy for a candidate, I think that RT is doing the smart thing to do. The problem is that the newspapers, the television stations, the radio stations, and even the public radio stations, and the bloggers too, are completely dead as a switch. None of them are talking about it. And I'll tell you, you can't have a democracy unless you have elections. And you can't have elections unless you have a campaign where the candidates and the elected officials who were incumbents have a discussion about the issues. And that is not happening in the city of Minneapolis. And as my friend David Cho has many times said, if there are no candidates to speak, there is no speech. And so that's the importance of candidates and of elections. If you have candidates, they can talk about the issues. If you don't have candidates, it doesn't get brought up. The incumbents will just go up there and say everything is wonderful and we're doing great and thank you very much for voting me back into office. I think that what he is not good at is running the city. I think his decisions have been bad. In the last 3 years, he's supported no audit for the city of Minneapolis. And I'll tell you, I served on boards of directors for many nonprofits through the years. And you cannot get any money, any funding as a nonprofit if you don't have, number one, your books balanced in an order, and number two, that you have to have an audit by an outside independent auditing service to come in and say that your books are in order and that the money actually is going where you say it's going and is coming from where you say it's coming from. That's what an audit does. Our city has not had one in 3 years. How many people knew that? Except my family. You knew that. And it hasn't had it because the mayor and 2 city council members have voted against it for the last 3 years. You've probably heard the city has always had a AAA rating. for the bonding agency so we can get the lowest rate for our bonds that we need to do things for the city. One of our bond ratings has gone to I think it's AA minus, and the other two are still at AAA. But that means that we can't sell our bonds in New York anymore because the rating, they won't buy the bonds. So they're now going to the Netherlands and to France to sell our bonds, and I think we need to fix that problem. Yes.
What would be your plans to revitalize downtown Minneapolis? You got things like Block E that's slowly emptying of all of its business. Bars close and sometimes reopen and sometimes don't. What would be your idea to get people to come to downtown Minneapolis, spend money, and have a good time down there?
They can't come down there and have a good time if there's no place to go. And I think that the city policy has actually emptied out a lot of this. Part of it's the economy, and I think a lot of that has to go on the shoulders of the Bush administration and the economic terrorists in New York, on Wall Street, in the investment banks and so on. I think those people, I really believe they belong in jail. I don't know why that they're still out getting bonuses. They belong in jail for what they've done to the entire world. But I can't do anything about that as the mayor of Minneapolis. But one thing that could be done, I think that they're so difficult to work with at the city that the businesses are leaving. What they have to do is find a way to help the businesses. And I'm not saying they should not enforce standards. You can enforce standards, you just should not be ridiculous. And there are ways to do that, and now St. Paul is starting to do that. I've talked to a concert producer that used to do a lot of events in Minneapolis. He gets corporate money to put on big events, and he hires all kinds of great, famous and great musicians to come and do performances. And he used to do them in Minneapolis all the time during the summer. He's now doing them exclusively in St. Paul. And it has nothing to do with money. It had to do with the way that the city worked with them. And so I think that the city is its own worst enemy. I think the city has to get out of the development business. They're not good at it. That's been one of the big dynamics. There's been a couple of things going on at the city level. The first thing that happened was the library disappeared. Just after we spent, I can't remember how much it was to build that new building. 250 million. It was a lot of money to tear down the old one and build a new one. And then after they had it built, suddenly they didn't have the money to operate it. That seems kind of crazy. But then they gave the library to the county. And we're still paying for the building, even though the county is running the library. So the significance of that also is that they have a seat on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. The library board did. So what that means is that there's one fewer voice to ask for an audit on the Board of Estimate and Taxation, because there are two elected. There are a park board and the library board, and then there's 2 city council members and the mayor make up the Board of Estimates. So this is one fewer. If they could get rid of the park board, that would be one less vote on the Board of Estimate and Taxation, which some people feel that that's what's going on, is that what they're trying to do is they're trying to consolidate the power in downtown Minneapolis, in the mayor and in the city council, and the city council president particularly, to consolidate the power. And the taking back of the NRP money and having the city council control it and the mayor control it is another part of the centralizing of the financial spending, which financial spending equals power. One last thing I want to talk about is that how would we solve the economic problems that the city is facing? Because it's an economic situation as well as a mismanagement one. The economic situation, I think, would be greatly helped if we would do something to actually help the small business sector of the city of Minneapolis.